What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy, Morgan Cannon. Morgan, we are a few days away from the Super Bowl, but there is still a lot of buzz in the NFL, specifically, I guess, with this being the media week leading up to the Super Bowl. You have a lot of former players, a lot of former, or not former, but a lot of current players and a lot of coaches and things like that, sitting down, talking to different media members, sitting down, doing podcast interviews. And the Myles Garrett topic is still one that is still buzzing, even though a few days have passed since he kind of made that announcement that he would like to be traded by the Cleveland Browns. And specifically, if you're a Lions fan, that flame is getting fanned quite a bit. Every chance that someone has to ask a Lions player about Myles Garrett, they're taking it. Every opportunity that people have to take a picture of Myles Garrett with a Lions player, they're taking it. There's a lot that's really happening around this topic. So we've already did a video, obviously, that first reaction of this news, but there seems like there's still quite a bit that we can definitely dive into, specifically when it talks about like the financial obligations, because I think that's one thing that a lot of people aren't talking about. But whenever you start having trades, especially with, big talent like this, you're typically dealing with bigger contracts. So that's kind of what we wanted to just kind of dive into today. But I think what viewers are going to find is that there's a very interesting scenario going on when it comes down to Myles Garrett's contract, right?
Yeah, man. So we wanted to dive into it. And so I know the salary cap fairly well. Like I'm, pretty well versed. Both Eric and Jeremy know it better than I do. And I worked with them. So shout out to both of them. Me and Miko was talking to Eric last night. I was talking to him again this morning because what the Browns did, what they've been doing, they've been kicking that can, man. And what that really means is they're creating instantaneous relief for their salary cap. That's what you hear. Like the salary cap is real. That's one of the premises of this video for sure, because that bill is going to come due at one point or another. And if that's what you're thinking about when teams are creating, they're converting signing bonus, or they're converting base salary to signing bonus, they're creating relief for that cap year by spreading it out over the course of years, right? So
Yeah.
In this instance with Myles Garrett, back in 2020, he signed a 5-year, $125 million extension, $50 million guaranteed. Okay. And then in 2023, they converted a little over 16 million of his 2023 salary to a signing bonus, created like 13 million for them in that moment, which they obviously needed. They've been competitive for a while. The Browns have had a talented roster, right, Miko? Like it's there. However, it gets worse. Cleveland then went and converted all of Garrett's future salaries into prorated bonuses and added 5 voidable years to the end of his contract. Okay, so this is like super duper kicking the can, folks. So that's why when you look at also all this, information is readily available. I recommend using Over the Cap first and foremost. But that's why when you see his base salary is like 1.255 million in 2025, that's why. So they basically, what a voided year is, they're additional years tacked onto the end of a contract, all right, where a bonus is spread out, maximum 5 years. A prorated bonus is cash that is guaranteed at signing, minus like if a player were to get suspended or whatever, like that can void a contract. It's what the Lions and Cam Sutton, I think, are still currently going. I think that's it, still in, not trial. How would you say it, Miko?
Kind of in flux.
Yeah, like that's being hashed out because they're trying to void that deal, because that's something that can do it. Otherwise, prorated bonus, think of that, guys. That's that guaranteed money for the most part. When they talk about guaranteed money, when a player signs a deal, I think Panay got like 90 million guaranteed, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have his open. I have a lot of tabs open, just not that one.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about. And that prorated bonus is spread out over a span of years. Again, 5 years being the max, right? Otherwise, if it's a 3-year deal, it's going to be spread out that way. Excuse me. And so that's what we're looking at here. So think about what I said now. Cleveland took all of his remaining guaranteed salaries for the rest of his extension and converted it to a prorated bonus, and then added 5 years of voided money. So that's what you see, all that craziness on Over the Cap. Yeah, you'd be inheriting Garrett theoretically at 5 million for 2025 and 10 million in 2026. But there's a lot of variables. Am I making sense so far, Miko?
Yeah. I think so. I think that's like the big thing that fans are probably wondering then is like, okay, so there's all this, like you said, there's all this prorated signing bonus money that he is guaranteed to receive. And I think you'll get people that'll then be like, well, then the Lions or anyone that trades for Myles Garrett, like they have to take responsibility for that funds. That's the thought process. But the actuality is like, no, Cleveland is still responsible for that money. Like they guaranteed him that money. So therefore, if he were to be traded to the Lions, like you were saying before, the thing that Myles Garrett is would then be like, paid from a team like the Lions, or again, any team that were to trade for him, is that base salary and any other bonuses that he's basically due. I know you were telling me before, like if Myles Garrett is traded before like the third day of the league year, and if he were land on the Lions, like the Lions are responsible for paying his roster bonus that he's guaranteed. So it's like it's those types of things that I think a lot of fans probably aren't aware of. They just see whatever his cap number is, and they're like, "Oh, well, he's due 19 million, so the Lions are going to have to take on 19 million dollars." That's not how NFL contracts work in this situation. And it's specifically with how, like you said, how Cleveland structured his contract, because so much of it is in those prorated signing bonuses.
Yeah, exactly, Miko. And there's only so much we can infer from like reading the salary, like the everything on over the cap that's available to everybody on the internet, right? But then there's specific language written into these contracts that just gets all in the weeds. Like I remember now, me and Eric were talking about it for the Goff and Stafford trade. The Rams. That's why the Lions. I don't know when that happened. It was like earlier in March, but they didn't execute it until I think March 18th. And you're right about the signing bonus for Garrett. It's the fifth day of the new league year, so it'd be
Right.
March 17th because the new league year is March 12th.
Okay.
So it's little things like that. But the Goff and Stafford trade, they had the Rams carry Goff's contract until the 16th because he was due a roster bonus, and they executed it on the 17th. That was a part of the deal that the Lions made at the time to make that trade. So, but yeah, for Garrett, it just depends on. To give more context to this, guys, the Browns are already over $30 million over the cap currently. So prior to March 12th, they're going to have to shed $30 million worth of salary cap in order to get under the apron or the salary. It's a hard salary cap. It's not an apron like the NBA.
Yeah.
Hard salary cap. Because you're over that thing every day. It's draft picks. So there's steep penalties if you're not under the salary. You're not salary cap compliant by the new league year. So if the Browns were to trade Garrett if they were to trade Garrett, they would need before March 12th, excuse me, they'd be 16 million more over the cap, right? So you're looking at now they would have to get $46 million off of their books prior to March 12th to be salary cap compliant. So it's tricky for them, man. And then if they do a post June 1, right, they're carrying Garrett's contract on their books.
Yeah.
They have to account for it, right? So they're getting salary cap compliant, knowing like, dang, we're going to eat even more crow if we do trade Garrett post June 1, right? So that's what we're talking about with that post June 1 designation, guys, and pre June 1. Really, you can just think of it as if it's a post June 1, you're able to defer that dead money over the course of 2 years rather than eating it all in 1 year, if that makes sense, Miko.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I have a graphic here that'll probably help people a little bit when it comes to like what you're saying in terms of like what they would have to pay, what the Browns would be responsible for if again if they traded Myles Garrett before June 1st, right? So when Morgan and I are talking about prorated signing bonus, right? That's where you get this green box. This is all the money that Myles Garrett is guaranteed to receive no matter what, right? If he's on the roster, if he plays, he's guaranteed this money. If he is traded, like Morgan was saying, before June 1st, the Browns immediately have to take that $36 million hit. Like all of this money comes due at the exact same time. These red boxes here, the team that trades for him, again, we're talking specifically if the Lions were to trade for him, this is the money that they are responsible for paying Myles Garrett in those subsequent years. So in 2025, like Morgan said, you're talking about roughly close to $5 million, right? In that 2025 season, that 2026 season, it gets closer to $10 million. And then 27 is all of this other signing bonus money kind of gets pretty much compiled into one. and it's basically roughly like $30 million, right? And so that's why when we're talking about one, why it's tricky for the Browns, because it's like either you're going to take $36 million because you traded him before June 1st, and you have to, like Morgan was saying, you already have to shed 46 million. But if you decide to trade him before, then you now have to, like, you're talking about almost $70 million that you have to like try to shed to just become salary cap compliant in that moment.
If they traded him, they'd be at 46 million. That's where they'd be if they did it pre June 1 or
Gotcha.
pre March 12th, excuse me, like before the new league year, because they'd be, that $20 million, his his cap number would go with the acquiring team at that point, because it's before before the new league year, excuse me, on March 12th. So that they'd be 46 million over in that case, but otherwise, yes. Yeah. And it makes things weird, man. And then, like you said, for the Lions, that's why everyone's like, I think a lot of people have been saying, they're going to want to restructure him. And because it's essentially like, if you want to really boil it down, guys, like a 2-year, $45 million, that's what you're getting Garrett for. But the trick is, if they keep it as is, that, like you said, Miko, that $30 million will be due in 2027, because all that money in those voided years becomes due once the contract expires. So when you think expires, it means run out, traded, cut, anything, right? Like that all comes due at that moment. So yeah, that's what you'd be looking at. Like if you did no voided years, you'd be looking, $20 million as a cap number in 2025 and $25 million in 2026. Now, if you did want to keep the voided year, it would be more like $10 million in 2025, $15 million in 2026, and then $20 million in 2027, with the caveat that Garrett would no longer be on your roster at that point, because so you're paying $20 million in 27 for him to not be on your roster if you wanted to keep the voided year. And that's where all this stuff gets so tricky. So there's just so many variables. So if you really want to think about it, that cap hit for Myles Garrett could be anywhere from $5 million to $20 million, depending on the timing and,
Right.
what the team wants to, they could do weird things like the Lions did with Goff's roster bonus, where you agree on it and then execute it on another day. So hopefully this is all making sense. This is a specific one, but because there's so much, the Browns did so much cap gymnastics with his contract.
Yeah.
But it's a good learning point for if you're trying to learn more about the salary cap, right, Miko?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like to boil it down for everyone, to make this simple, if you are in the camp that like, hey, you want the Lions to do whatever it takes to trade for Myles Garrett, right? You don't care about the draft picks. Just go out and get this, go out and get one of the best defensive ends in football. Essentially what we're saying is the cap number can be very friendly in the first couple seasons. It could also become very expensive when we start to talk about 2027 if you don't restructure that contract, if you don't figure out a way to basically spread that money out and basically make sure that Myles Garrett is still on your roster post 2027. And that's why you would want to restructure that deal. It is very tricky for Cleveland because essentially they're kind of in a lose-lose situation because of, again, they're already over the cap. So I think a trade for Myles Garrett is going to be very interesting to watch in terms of when it happens. And essentially, when do the Browns decide to take their lumps? Because they're going to have to take them at some point in time. And it's just a matter of what they decide to do. But I think, again, what it also does with trading for a player like this is that the asking price becomes very specific, in my opinion, Morgan. Like, this is not a situation where I think sometimes what you see is like a team willing to take maybe one first round pick this year and then willing to take like several first round picks in this, like, coming years. If you're the Browns and this is the cap situation that you're in, I think the team that is able to offer the most day one and day two picks is probably the team that ends up with Myles Garrett. Not to say that you won't have to give away any future picks, but the Browns are in such a terrible situation cap wise. They need rookie cheap talent more than they need future assets, and they need them now.
Yeah, man. And I'm glad we talked about this a lot, folks, if y'all can't tell. But yeah, when Miko said this, I was like 100%. And Eric did too, because yeah, you need cheap talent, man, because this is you're in a tough spot here. And they did it to themselves with the Watson contract, making that all fully guaranteed. He's uncuttable, man. You can go to over the cap. You can do the little drop down and look at a cut pre-June, a pre-June 1 designation for Deshaun Watson, and your eyes might pop out your head. All right, that's all
Yeah.
I'll say. But they did it to themselves too with this. They've essentially, when you hear like people on ESPN talk about, they've essentially made Myles Garrett untradeable. This is like we spent 15 minutes talking about it, but this is why, because they converted. It all started in 2023 when they converted all of his, his base salaries, his remaining base salaries for that extension to a prorated signing bonus. Think about that, folks. That'd be like in 2 more years. Well, actually, no. Yeah, 2 more years basically. And they would, if the Lions did that to Penei Sewell's remaining Garrett, because that's what the Browns did with Garrett. He played 3 years on his rookie deal. They're like, okay, we have a generational guy,
Yep.
and then they tacked on his 5-year extension to the back half. And so you think about that, they put 5 voided years on the back end of that thing. So that's why it gets so messy. And we just wanted to give context. We're not saying one thing or another. I'm not going to sit here and say me and Miko would be over the moon if Myles Garrett was on our football team. But you look at what it's going to cost, because you're going to restructure that deal. I can say that pretty emphatically right now. You're not going to incur $20 million. Like good case scenario, you incur a $20 million cap hit in 2027 for him not to be on your team, right? We're not doing that, folks. It's not an intelligent way to build a roster, right? So you're gonna give up a ton of picks, like Miko just said, and I think they're going to be immediate ones, because the Browns don't need help in 26 or 27. They need help today.
Yeah, because they're going to have to cut. They're going to have to cut starters.
Yep,
today.
several
starters
soon.
So
the next month
again, yeah. So if you're the Browns, this is why it's going to be tricky for the Lions, right? Like, again, I think it's easy to say as a fan, hey, I don't care about the picks. Trade whatever you need to trade away to get Myles Garrett here. But if we're talking about the Lions basically trading away their first and second round pick this year, and still probably having to give away a first next year, or I mean, they'll get a third round pick because of the compensatory, but like, could you imagine the Lions having to give away their first 3 draft picks just for Myles Garrett? And then, like you said, Morgan, and then still have to restructure the contract. So, like, this is going to be tricky for any team that trades for Myles Garrett. But like I said, the team that has the most day 1 and day 2 picks that they're willing to give away this year, that is probably the team that's going to get him. And that's also probably the team that's able to restructure his contract as well. They're able to, again, incur those finances. So it's something to watch this entire offseason, to watch how it plays out. I think the Browns are absolutely going to trade him. It's just going to be the messiest looking trade that I think a lot of people have seen, right? And it's going to be to a team that's willing to give up those assets. And it's probably a team that's already on the cusp of a Super Bowl. Like you said, Morgan, I don't think that takes the Lions out of it, but I do think it makes it less likely, not because of one of those situations. It's not just the restructure. It's not just the draft picks. It's the combination of the two that I think really makes this a difficult decision for Brad Holmes and company to be able to decide, is Myles Garrett worth that kind of investment?
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from him. Defensive Player of the Year candidate on an annual basis, going to be a Hall of Famer. You can put that in ink. You know what I mean? Yeah, just given context, it's going to be tricky for any team. I think it's going to be ugly. I could see him getting extended for the Browns, because like they're going to be like, dude, wait, we can't do this. And like maybe they'll show him a plan like, hey, we'll be back in the saddle here soon enough. Like we're going to void Watson's year or contract. Hopefully that would get them out of a good amount of hot water.
Yeah.
Voiding the Watson deal. But I don't know. I kind of think like, is he gonna, if he does get dealt, it might be a team to like the Commanders, right? Because they have a rookie quarterback on a star quarterback on a rookie deal. Maybe they feel like they've caught lightning in a bottle here. But at the end of the day, I think Brad Holmes is going to call, because I feel like he's one that always do his due diligence. Any good GM would. But I just can't see like, yeah, I'll give you my first 4 draft picks this year plus another next year.
You know who will do that? And it would make this fan base livid. It's the Bears. Say? The Bears would absolutely do this.
Yeah, that's true.
Without even thinking twice about it. And
that would suck.
It would, yeah, like I said, like Lions fans would be livid over the situation. But this feels like something that the Bears have done in the past, and that they would do again. That they would give up on their future to simply jump ahead of, or again, attempt to jump ahead of the Lions and the Vikings to be that top team in the NFC North by acquiring Myles Garrett. And they would just be like, well, we don't need all of these other picks, and then we were going to continue to watch them suffer with a terrible offensive line. That's just how I feel like that's how it would go.
Yeah, man, that's a good point about the Bears. That would suck. I'm not gonna lie, and I do feel like the Browns, if they do deal him, they probably want to get him out of the AFC, or I would, at least. But yeah, just
Definitely
to
the
give
AFC North.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if other fans, if other fans of teams are watching this video, I hope this gives you a little bit more context. Share it with family and friends, and hopefully this just gives you like a little bit better of a picture of what it would look like to acquire Garrett, and why so many people, like why you hear, people on ESPN and whatnot saying he's like untradeable. This is what they're talking about, because the Browns made things really difficult. If he was easily tradable, man, I think their GM, it's Andrew Berry, isn't it?
I think so. I think he's still their GM.
He's going to keep saying, guys, like the media, he's not going to change with his stance to the media, because otherwise he's going to lose more leverage than he's already lost.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to keep saying, like, we're not going to trade him. He's a Brown for life, blah, blah, blah. But it could happen. Will it happen? I don't know, just because we just outlined it, right? There's a lot going on. So
yeah,
I don't know.
There's a lot going on. It's going to be something that, like you said, it's going to be worth watching the rest of this offseason. And it's something that obviously we'll be keeping tabs on, is as long as the Lions are again, in the mix as a team that could be vying for him, whether it's over here on the YouTube channel or over on the Pride of Detroit website, like there is going to be continued information about this, because we're talking, like you said, a former defensive player of the year, one of the greatest defensive players that we've seen in a while. So definitely something to keep tabs on. So whether you want to stay subscribed here on the YouTube channel, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That really helps us continue to show up in your algorithm. It makes it easier for you to find our videos. Or you can check out prideofdetroit.com, where we are uploading brand new articles all the time, whether it's related like as something as big as, who the Lions are hiring or signing, or something as little as, hey, Aiden Hutchinson was talking to Myles Garrett at the NFL Honors Awards. We cover it all over on the POD channel and over on the website. Also, make sure to drop us a comment down below. Let us know what you think about the Lions' chances of trading for Myles Garrett. Do you think it's likely? Do you think they should do it? Or any other opinion that you may have on the topic. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.